how, the only life in the universe is here on Earth, yet the universe is infinite. Well, that doesn't make any sense, yet we've got these UFOs coming here, so maybe there's something to that. So when I was in high school, we used to have study hall in the library at high school. So I'm browsing through the library, and I come across, I believe it was Time Life Books, had a volume set on the paranormal. One of the volumes was on UFOs. I opened up that book, and from there, it opened up a whole new world for me to where, hey, look, this UFO thing, there is actually a lot of evidence behind this because it went through different stories. It talked about abductions. It talked about sightings. It talked about all kinds of different experiences. And it wasn't just a blip on the nightly news that a lot of times was done in kind of a joking way or a way to make the person that experienced whatever it was look like they were a bit of a nut. It was done in a really serious way, and it really opened my eyes to, hey, there is really something more to this. Now, you fast forward to the internet age, now there's information available at your fingertips. The biggest thing that fascinates me is this. I talked about earlier, 3 big questions of mankind. Is there life after death? Is there a God? And are we alone in the universe? So the first 2, unfortunately, Gary, we're probably not going to get those answers until our time here on Earth is over. But the third one, is there life in the universe? I believe that we have the answer to that question. There is other life in the universe, and we live in a time where there's plenty of evidence around to really remove within a shadow of a doubt that that is the case. So for me, that was the fascination from the standpoint of, hey, look, here's one of the biggest questions ever in the history of mankind, and we live in a time where we can actually get that answer. Wow. So in addition to that, having really followed the topic for quite some time, read about it, watched videos about it, movies about it, the biggest thing that stood out to me is how much bad information is out there. So he talked about not all researchers and ufologists are created equally. There is a ton of bad information out there. And I'm not saying that to throw stones at anybody, but it is the reality. So I wanted to do something about it, kind of like you. So I really love your philosophy, that is that radio should be free, correct?
That's what I think it should be.
Yeah, and I feel the same way as far as radio should be free, so should good information. And good information should be available at your fingertips whenever you want it. So with a lot of support from my wife, we decided to start a website that we call AverageGuyUFO.com. Because I am an average guy. I do not consider myself a ufologist. I do not consider myself a researcher. I consider myself somebody that's very passionate, very knowledgeable about the topic, and I want to help educate people about the UFO and alien topic in a way that when they go to my website, they know that the information that they're reading is credible. So I consider myself more of a filter. So you won't learn new information from me. Well, you might, because I watch a lot of different outlets and a lot of different researchers. But I'm probably never going to crack a case and have a bunch of evidence that is all my own. But what I can do is provide information that I believe to be credible. Because I feel as though this is a topic whose time has come, and people, meaning average people, like your listeners or the average person that you run into at the mall, they really need to educate themselves on this topic, because the day that all this information reaches the world is the day that the world changes forever. And from my perspective, it changes for the better. So those are the things that drive me. So I would invite all of your listeners to check out AverageGuyUFO.com. Check out the articles that we have on there. The other thing that I really love is to get feedback from our readers. I also have a Twitter handle, which is UFO Dad. So I invite everybody to check it out and, of course, provide their feedback and comments, because those are the things that's what we use to make that site better.
Now, do you have a Facebook, too, where they can find you?
I do. So also by the same name, So our Facebook page is Average Guy UFO. So you can check us out on there. I have a lot of articles. So the website is fairly new, Gary. So up until September, I had never known anything about writing articles or any kind of web design, anything like that at all. I started it from scratch in September, and I've learned as I go. So I do everything myself. In addition to, when I say I'm an average guy, I really am an average guy. So I'm fortunate to have a great job with a great company. I have a great family. My wife is awesome, very supportive. I have 2 great kids. And this is kind of like a sideline for me. So I work about a 12 to 13-hour day, 5 days a week. And in my free time, which is about an hour a night, I work on this website and kind of learn as I go. So I hope your fans and your listeners enjoy it and keep on checking back, because I get a little bit better at it every time that I go on there, every time I write an article or post something. But we still got a little ways to go to kind of make it perfect.
Well, you sound a lot like me. When Art called me up about 15 months ago, Art Bell, and because he knows I was I'm into motorcycles, but I have health issues, and he knows it. And, he was making some remark to me. He goes, "Hey, are you going to come up and visit on your, Harley?" And I go, "I don't know. I just don't think I have the energy anymore to, that's a long ride from Seattle." And, he said, "Well, you used to be really good in radio. Why don't you get back in radio?" And I said, "Hey, I'm retired. I've been out for a while." And, he talked me into it. And the thing is, the last few radio stations I worked in, and most of them, going back to 76, we didn't have computers. And when we did have computers, I'd only use it for like reference because, I'm an old school broadcaster. So, to do this on my own, I mean, Art helped me a lot with what type of equipment to put in, but I had to figure out, because I have electronic background, I had to wire all these servers together. I run like 7 computers to do this show. And, feed it out, to, wherever.
Sure.
And the thing is, I didn't know how to do a website. My wife knows computers, but she didn't really want to get into it that heavy because she works, like 12 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Sure.
And then has to commute 90 miles a day back and forth to work. So, I had, just like you, I had to learn how to do a web. I had to learn how to, do all this stuff on my own. And it was hard. But, I'm like, but here's my issue. Is why I say radio should be free. I started out and I had a couple people, advertisers. And all of a sudden they started dictating to me like, well, I don't think you should have this type of guest on your show. And then I started realizing, well, that's not the way it should be. It's my show. It's not their show. And then one of my biggest advertisers came up and said, well, I don't think you should have this guy on or this guy or this guy that I had scheduled on. And I said, you know what? I don't think I should have you on anymore. And then that's when I cut off all the advertisers. And I've gone for the past year, the last 10 months without any advertisers. I survive out of my own pocketbook and donations. Now,
that's a really brave move, Gary. That is really a brave move. Good for you.
Well, I've been approached with a major network, that they want to pick up my show on middle of January. And I have mixed feelings because so far they pretty much said that, well, here's the issue I have. I don't have to, at that point, I won't have to find the guests anymore. They'll have one of their people find me all my guests.
Sure.
Then all of a sudden they told me, because I normally don't take call-ins, because I want to spend my, a lot of these talk shows, right? Between their advertising and their call-ins, you figure a 3-hour show with a guest, you got 1 hour really with a guest. That's it.
Yeah.
And I want the hour or 2 hours I spend with a guest to be all about the guest. Occasionally I will take some call-ins. Well, the thing is, I'm going to have to start taking call-ins. I can't pick out my guest, and they're going to start screening the calls that come in. It kind of, in my mind, is defeating what I wanted to do. And I want to give if you listen to my show, maybe it's not quite as good as Coast to Coast or Midnight in a Desert, but it's certainly better than, I would say, a couple thousand other shows out there. And,
absolutely,
I try to give the best content for free. And you don't have to pay to listen to any of my previous shows. You can go on there and click and listen to them, for free. And I'm trying to get the information out there that you have and that Timothy Collin has, or, any of the guests I have on. I'm trying to get their information out and not be controlled by somebody saying, you can't have this person on your show.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of being self-employed for about 11 years and having my own business. And, man, there's nothing like that freedom of being able to do whatever you think is going to be in the best interest of your business. So really good for you to really stay on that path because, look, there is a lot of comfort in being with a big company, and it takes a lot of the burden off of you just from an infrastructure standpoint, like you're saying, with getting guests and technology and just support with running a website and everything. But good for you as far as really sticking to your values and saying, hey, look, this is my show. This is the way I want to do it. A lot of broadcasters in your shoes would not go that way.
No, and it's because I hate to say it, it's money involved, okay? And
sure it is.
But again, like I was mentioning, when you have a sponsor telling you can't have certain guests or we won't run ads on your show, and then you start thinking, okay, well, then you get another sponsor. It's, it starts eliminating what, if they don't believe in UFOs, all of a sudden you're not talking about UFOs, and it gets scary. I mean, at one point, I'll be honest with you, for about a month period, that's when I made the decision, I'm not going to do this anymore. Pretty much, I was having mediums, not knocking mediums, okay? But I had mediums on 5 nights a week pretty much because they didn't want me to talk about UFOs. They didn't want me to talk with, like, Chad Meek was the one that did it, His father, or grandfather had it out in the desert, where he saw UFOs and he got involved with Howard Hughes, invested money into it, and they built a ranch and all. It was a good
interesting
thing. But all of a sudden, after I had him on, you can't do this anymore. We don't,
really?
We don't want to be associated with, crackpots about UFOs. As soon as they said that to me, I got mad. I got off the phone. I called him up and said, you know what? I don't want your money.
Mm. And it sounds very similar to something that Art would do, huh?
Oh, I don't know. Art was kind of, he warned me about this, but, the freedom of, like what he was trying to do, too, with internet radio, is that, you can get away with a lot more things on here than you can with commercial radio. And
sure.
I will say my studio rivals virtually if you went into any radio station, my control room, my studio rivals any, because I guess it's because of my background, rivals any radio
sure.
station in this country pretty much. So, my technology is there, my equipment is there, my sound, I think, is there.
You could potentially continue to do the show from your studio and then just pipe it in through a network then, right?
Well, I was offered to be going on 300 radio stations in January.
Wow.
And again, but the thing is that I don't know. See, it kind of defeats the purpose. I'm retired. Yeah, I'd like to have the extra money, but I really don't need it on the other hand. But from the standpoint, if I can't have the type of guest I have on, then, if you listen to some of these shows, it's the same type of guest night after night after night. This month we're talking about UFOs, but I kind of like varying the show a little bit, and bringing the people in too that maybe the other shows don't want to bring on.
Yeah, and I'm sure that there's ratings pressure that comes along with that too. I notice when we have UFO people on, the ratings are lower than when we have these people on, or vice versa. And then they're really starting to mess with the fabric of what your vision is for the show. And I think that's where the friction starts and the unhappiness starts at that point.
Well, yeah, like I'm on 2 stations right now in California. And, normally I do a news bit, like I did today. I talk about, economy. I talk about, the weather, earth changes. and I talk about it for 3 minutes. Now, you know what? I get hundreds of emails a week saying they love that. You know, today I have a